Good morning. This is going to be part two of the Lunar Month for countries and people from May 7th through June 6th. So let's see if I can share my screen. And as usual, I just have a few housekeeping things to take care of. Before I can start, I need to get rid of some panels so that I can see what I'm doing. And now let's see if I can do this full screen. So here we are. The Lunar Month for Countries and People, Part 2. And we'll talk about Putin, Russia, Ukraine, King Charles, Kate Middleton, the United Kingdom, and Pope Francis, and what the cosmic weather looks like for them from May 7th through June 6th. And we'll just talk briefly about each person or country here, beginning with Putin. And as usual, I start out with the buy wheel, which shows, in this case, Putin's chart on the inside and the full moon, which is midway through the month, on the outside. I use the full moon because then you can probably see aspects which will be in effect throughout the entire month or a good portion of the month. They're probably still going to be in effect on the full moon, and I follow that with a graph which shows duration of those aspects and when they actually become exact. And for these bars here, I use a 1 degree orb, but for the bi-wheel, I use a 2 degree orb in order to catch more of the aspects that will be important one time or another during the lunar month. And I usually start with the tense aspects and end with the easy aspects. So for Putin, we see we do have some tense aspects. We have transiting Uranus, squaring his natal Pluto, and his Pluto is in the 10th house. So this puts pressure on him for change. The 10th house has to do with status in society, and there is pressure, external pressure probably, since Uranus is transiting through a 7th house. So this can create pressure for regime change, or at least a change in direction. And Pluto rules Putin's first house, so this also affects him personally. Now, of course, Putin has a firm grip on power, so he may be able to easily withstand these external forces for change, hold on to power, and just ride the whole thing out. Okay, what else do we have going on? Transiting Chiron down here is making an opposition to his natal Neptune, very strong to Neptune, and with an orb of an opposition to natal Mercury. Chiron, at its best, it urges us to focus our attention or shift our attention from the visible world to the invisible world. It's a bridge to the spiritual realm and the more transcendent realm. It's a drive to transcend the world that we can see. In Putin's case, I don't think that is what is going to happen. He does not seem to be all that enlightened. So, uh, when you're not open to these energies, they tend to cause some wounding. And of course, there have been a lot of rumors of health problems off and on throughout the past couple of years. And sometimes we see Putin looking rather shaky in public, literally shaking as if he's experiencing symptoms of Parkinson's. But lately, he's looked pretty healthy. Well, this transit is taking place along the 6th, 12th house axis, so this could affect his health or hidden enemies or self-undoing in some way. And that is the impact of Chiron. As for Neptune, that represents things which are often hidden, not easily seen, not easily defined. The boundaries are fuzzy. So he may be suffering from some confused thinking. The boundaries of his thoughts could not be very clear. He could have some severe health problems. There could even be assassination attempts. All of those things are in the realm of possibility. And as usual, we'll have to wait and see what happens. Unfortunately, uh, Russia is not the most open society in the world, so quite often things happen that we may never hear about. Okay, he also has transiting Saturn, making a sesquiquadrate to his natal ascendant. Saturn is our drive to toward control and regulation, the drive to discipline ourselves, control our thoughts and actions. But when we do not consciously control ourselves, then it expresses itself as frustration and restriction. So it looks like there is going to be some sort of restriction on Putin at this time. Again, he may be experienced enough with things like this that uh, it's no big deal to him. Or if it is, we may not hear about it in the news. But astrologically, this is the sort of thing we expect. The angle is a sesquiquadrate, which is a kind of a turning point or breaking point. So he may have some depression, particularly with Chiron in opposition to Neptune, and Saturn sesquiquadrate his ascendant at the same time, or some other kind of restriction on his behavior. Now, on the good side, transiting Saturn is also going to make a trine to his natal Uranus. And this could be beneficial for him. Saturn is control, Uranus is creativity. He may have some very creative thoughts at this time or see some new directions, new things to do. And also, we have transiting Chiron making a trine to both his midheaven and Pluto. To some extent, this helps offset the pressures for change in Putin's personal life and in his status in society. To some extent, this could bring a healing to his status and to his power and his personal being. And then we have transiting Pluto, making a trine to his natal moon. This will help strengthen his health, his body, and his whole constitution. So it's kind of a mix of tense stuff and easy stuff, maybe slightly more on the tension side. And this will show us when things become exact. Uh, Chiron opposition Neptune, that is in effect throughout almost all of May. It's exact on May 9th. Uranus square Pluto, that is exact on May 6th, and it lasts through at least the first 3 weeks of May. Saturn sesquiquadrate is ascendant. Well, that lasts from about the time of the new moon, the beginning of this lunar month, through the next new moon, and maybe a week past that to around the first quarter moon in June. And it's going to be exact on the 21st. Now, what's interesting is in part one of my presentation on the lunar month for countries and people, there were a variety of people or countries that were going to have aspects becoming exact either on or within a few days of May 23rd, which is not only my birthday, but also the date of the full moon. And this suggests that the 23rd, or within a few days of that, may be a particularly tense time for the world. And I think May 23rd was a significant date in the lunar month for Israel and also for Hamas. And close to that, on the 21st, that will be a significant date for Putin. And we're going to see some other charts in this presentation that I'm doing now, where again, the 23rd or days close to that are going to be significant. All right. Now, as far as Chiron in opposition to natal Mercury, that really doesn't take effect until right before the beginning of June, but it builds in intensity. It becomes exact in the following lunar month on June 27th. Okay, now if we look at the good stuff, we have Chiron trine midheaven. That lasts all of May, and it's exact on May 11th. Pluto trine natal moon, that's an exact through all of May. Doesn't ever become exact this time. Saturn trine Uranus. That is going to be in effect shortly after the beginning of the lunar month on May 7th, peaks on May 25th, and continues throughout the rest of the lunar month and into the next lunar month. Okay, and let's see what else. Let's see, I didn't put a rectangle around Saturn sextile Jupiter, but I should have because that starts to go into effect in June. So we're still within this lunar month that ends on June 6th and then gains intensity as June progresses. This is going to be pretty beneficial as it will um, bring about sort of a balance between expansion, growth, and regulation. Okay, let's see. I also did not put a rectangle around Uranus sesquiquadrate Chiron. That will be in effect for perhaps the first week of this lunar month, around May 7th through the 14th. That's a stronger, but right before the lunar month begins. Let's take a look at these aspects in the natal chart. Uranus making a sesquiquadrate to Chiron. Let's see, we have Chiron over here in third house. Has to do with mental activities and communication. Uranus is unexpected things. Chiron can often manifest as wounding, though it really is just urging us to go from the visible to the invisible world. Best case scenario, some sudden enlightenment for Vladimir Putin. Worst case scenario would be some kind of mental wounding and more erratic behavior. Now, Saturn, sextile Jupiter. Let's see. It's, I really should have circled this. Sorry about that, because it's pretty strong at the time of the full moon, which is on May 23rd. And we have Saturn at 18 degrees of Pisces, Jupiter at 19 plus degrees of Taurus. It's within 2 degrees orb easily. It's just outside of 1 degree orb when you look at the minutes. And that's why on this chart here, it's shown as not really kicking in until the beginning of June. But that is going to help them balance things more, getting a balance between the expansion, the growth of Jupiter, and the restriction are actually discipline and control of Saturn. So, all in all, there are some pressures on Putin in May, but there's also a variety of beneficial aspects which could enhance his ability to withstand those pressures. And there's a lot of different possibilities. We don't know which ones will manifest. So, as I often say, we just have to wait and see. Now, if we look at Russia, we have more tensions than easy things, it appears, going on in Russia's chart. Transiting Pluto is opposite the natal ascendant, which means it's conjunction the descendant. And that suggests that Russia is getting a lot of pressure from without, probably from other countries, could be other people, people protesting Russia's actions. But of course, it's interesting that Russia is currently involved in a war with another country, with Ukraine, and it's receiving a lot of pressure from the United States and from NATO and the European Union. And so that is going to be continuing. Pluto is moving retrograde now, so it is going to cross over the ascendant descendant axis. The descendant is about 1 degree Aquarius, and it's crossed over at once going direct. It's going to cross over it again, going retrograde. And in total, it's going to make about 5 crossings over this descendant, I think in 2024, 2025. So I expect this conflict may continue uh, through those years, that conflict with Ukraine. Also, we have transiting Uranus is in opposition to natal Venus. Now, natal Venus is really pretty close to natal Pluto, and so we might consider it still being in opposition to Pluto as Venus isn't affected. So will Pluto. Venus is a pleasure principle. It represents the feminine. It's our drive to reduce tension. It's also the nonverbal right brain, and what we gives us pleasure we call good. What doesn't give us pleasure we usually call bad. So that right brain is associated with our values, what we think is good, what we think is bad. But with Venus closely aligned with natal Pluto here, Uranus stirring the pot, uh, that suggests that the people of Russia, they may want change. They may want change in their country's policies or change in their country's leadership. So again, we have to wait and see how that plays out. Just about every astrologer I know expects Putin to be gone by around February of 2026, if not earlier. That is when Saturn will conjoin with Neptune, and those conjunctions of Saturn and Neptune usually result in some sort of major change in Russia. Okay, we have transiting Saturn, square Mars. That's usually not very peaceful. Saturn can be frustration, Mars is aggression. When those two come together and some interaction, it can be a very explosive combination. The better expression, though, would be the restrictive regulatory function of Saturn, limiting the aggression of Mars and a pulling back from the current conflict in Ukraine. That would be good. And lastly, we have transiting Pluto, making a sextile to the midheaven, and that is going to be beneficial for leadership in Russia or Russia's status in the world, since the 10th house has to do with status, where you are in the pecking order. Pluto is a lot of power, and the sextile is an easy aspect, a very beneficial aspect or coordination between these two things, status and power. Okay, here we can see when things become exact. Uranus is going to be exactly opposite Venus on May 8th, and it's going to be in effect through about the first 3 weeks of May. But as it leaves off, Saturn square Mars picks up, and it is going to become exact on June 10th, which is getting into the next lunar month. Pluto in opposition to the ascendant, that is in effect throughout the entire lunar month, all of May and June. And it's going to be very slowly building in intensity. And then we have Pluto making a sextile to the midheaven. That is in effect throughout all of May and June. And it is also building in intensity as we go through these 2 months. And now let's take a look at the chart for Ukraine. And we begin with transing Pluto conjunct natal Saturn. And this is going to be very bad news, and let me tell you why. For one thing, there is an opposition between Saturn and Chiron in Ukraine's natal chart. At its best, this can be something very beneficial for both for both Ukraine and the world. Chiron at its best is this more transcendent light, this very beneficial kind of energy. And Saturn at its best is discipline and control. And so at its best, sorry, I got a little bit of congestion in my throat, so my voice is going to be a little raspy this morning. We'll just have to keep talking and hope that all clears up. But Saturn, as discipline and control, Ukraine could help bring light, higher spiritual light into the world. That would be the best thing. But what we're seeing is a lot of restriction and wounding going on in Ukraine now. And the bad news is it's going to take about 3 years for Pluto to get beyond activating this Saturn Chiron opposition in the natal chart. This is going to last from 2024 through 2025 through 2026. Furthermore, Pluto has already been exactly conjunct Saturn once, and it's going to be exactly conjuncted 4 more times. So we're going to have 5 times that Pluto passes over Saturn. And Pluto at its worst is death and destruction. At its best, it is complete transformation. So, will the war with Russia go on for the next 3 years? I don't know. But either way, there's going to be a lot of transformation of Ukraine over this time. It could be a lot of destruction, particularly destruction of infrastructure, which is what Saturn represents, and a lot of wounding for the country and the people. So there are better scenarios, but they are less likely at this point. And it looks like the next 3 years are going to be three very tough years for Ukraine. Now, we also have transiting Uranus, sesquiquadrate the natal ascendant, and natal Uranus. So this represents a lot of unexpected developments, sudden changes, and Uranus, as I keep saying, it breaks up the existing pattern. And natal Uranus and the ascendant are Capricorn, which is ruled by Saturn. That represents control, regulation again. There may be a breaking up of uh, the country's ability to control itself. And let's see what else. We have transiting Saturn down here, making a sesquiquadrate to natal Chiron. Remember, sesquiquadrates are turning points or breaking points. Saturn can be restriction or better beneficial discipline. Chiron can be a sweet spiritual energy, or it can be wounding. Chances are we're probably going to see more restriction, more wounding of Ukraine. Okay. And actually, it's a little bit of out of orb, but using bigger orbs, when Saturn is making a sesquiquadrate here to Chiron, it tends to be making a semi-square with its natal position. So this does not look very happy. Uh, Probably more restriction, more suffering for the people of Ukraine, unfortunately. But that is just a possibility. I may be surprised. People may embark along better paths. Now, we also have transiting Saturn making a trine to Pluto, which is in the 10th house, represents the leadership of Ukraine. And so this by itself can be very promising, help, helpful for Zelensky and uh, maybe other leaders within Ukraine. And we have transiting Chiron making a sextile to the natal moon. This can bring about some healing for the people of Ukraine. And since the natal moon is conjunct the cusp of the second house, which has to do with money, possessions, this could represent a beneficial flow of needed supplies and money into Ukraine to help them withstand the onslaught of Russia. And here is when things are going to be exact. Pluto conjunct Saturn, that's strong throughout all of May and June, becomes exact in the next lunar month on June 24th. Transiting Uranus, sesquiquadrate the ascendant, that is in effect throughout the entire lunar month from May 7th through June 6th, and it becomes exact on May 23rd. Another one of those things which will be exact on or around May 23rd, so we need to pay careful attention to this date. Saturn, sesquiquadrate Chiron, that's in effect in the latter half of May, all of June, and becomes exact on June 3rd, right before the start of the next lunar month. Transiting Uranus, sesquiquadrate natal Uranus, that is in effect mainly in June and becomes exact on the 17th. Okay, for the beneficial stuff, Saturn trine Pluto, that is in effect throughout May and is exact on May 15th, right in the middle. And Chiron sextile the moon. It looks like that kicks in around the time of the new moon on May 7th, becomes exact on the 29th, goes beyond the next new moon through most of June. and transiting Uranus, trine Mars. That is in effect mainly in June and is exact in the following lunar month on the 17th. And let's see, I did not have Uranus trine Mars highlighted over here. So let's see, transiting Uranus is right over here. Natal Mars is up here. I do have it circled. I just didn't write it down over here. That escaped me. Sorry about that. So this could help Ukraine in its military effort and some unexpected new developments which could help it in its struggle against Russia. So that's going to be beneficial. So in terms of red and blue, the tense aspects versus the easy aspects, it's just about half and half, a little bit more, leaning a little bit more toward the red than the blue. But the thing that concerns me the most is this conjunction of Pluto with Saturn, because that is activating the Saturn Chiron opposition, and that opposition is going to be activated, impacted over the next 3 years. And Pluto in total makes 5 passes over natal Saturn. It's done one already. There are 4 more left to go. So this could be very devastating for Ukraine, a lot of destruction of infrastructure and a lot of wounding of people. Now let's shift to King Charles. And his chart is not looking quite so bad. We have transiting Neptune square both natal Uranus and natal Jupiter. And this makes me wonder if he might get some sort of infection. Those seem to be connected with Neptune. This could also manifest as some sort of confusion or thinking, which is not too terribly clear. Perhaps some results of chemotherapy that he is going through. But we certainly want to keep an eye on that. Also, he has transiting Uranus in opposition to, let's see, I've got natal sun here, and oh, that's not quite right. I've got a lot of typos apparently on the second half, so my apologies for that. This should be transiting. No, that is correct. I'm sorry, I was looking at the wrong thing. Transiting Uranus is up here, and it is in opposition to his natal sun. So, unexpected changes in his life, sudden changes. Perhaps he will be stepping away from his royal duties once again. Worst case scenario, he might have to step away from the crown and pass things on to his son, Prince William. Now, the good thing is that transiting Chiron will be making a trine to his natal Mars, and this could help bring healing to his physical body and boost his energy and his stamina. Okay, if we look at when things become exact, if we look at the overall distribution of red and blue here, well, I see more red than blue. And what is concerning me is once we get into June, it's just all red. The square of Neptune to both natal Jupiter and natal Uranus, that lasts throughout all of May and June. It becomes much stronger in June, and it will be exact on June 19th and June 29th. transiting Uranus in opposition to his sun. That was actually strongest on May 1st and is slowly fading. By the time we get a little bit past mid-May, and certainly into the third week of May, it will be mostly gone. And it seems like around this time, this was when we saw probably King Charles return to public life. So that may be the sudden change that the transits are foretelling. Now, Chiron making a trine to his Mars, that is in effect throughout at least 3/4 of May, and it became exact on May 5th. So right now, things are looking pretty good for him. He's out in public life again, but I do have this concern about June because all we see is red, no blue. Nothing but these two tense aspects going on in June. So this is where he might have some sort of illness, or there may be some sort of confused or muddled situation, maybe even an infection of some sort. Okay, now if we look at Princess Kate Middleton, she has transiting Chiron in opposition to Saturn. It's pretty strong at the time of the full moon. And this suggests some probably ongoing chemotherapy or other kinds of therapy for her cancer. Saturn again can represent restriction. Chiron can manifest as wounding. She might get some of the higher aspects of though on a personal level. She may be able to bring some higher spiritual energies into her life, make them concrete. So through her illness, she may get some spiritual benefit and make that transition from simply wounding to becoming a wounded healer, a shaman of sorts. Now, on the good side, she has a lot of very beneficial supporting aspects, all involving transiting Saturn. Transiting Saturn is going to make a sextile to her sun and also to natal Chiron and a trine to her moon. So this is going to really strengthen her constitution and help bring out the sweeter side of Chiron rather than the wounding side. So based upon this, I anticipate that her health may improve a lot. She may strengthen a lot. She may still be battling the cancer in her body, but I'm expecting a silver lining. I'm expecting that the troubles that she is going through now may result in greater maturity, greater spirituality, greater empathy, and greater connectedness with other people. So that could be the silver lining to what she has to go through right now. Okay, if we look at when these things become exact and how long the influence will be, well, Chiron in opposition to Saturn, that is in effect throughout the entire lunar month, a little bit beyond on both sides, and it's going to be at its peak on May 22nd, again, very close to May 23rd. May 23rd, which is also the full moon and my birthday, that looks like it is going to be a very impactful time in the world. So we need to keep our eyes on what happens around May 23rd. Now, the beneficial aspects, we have Saturn sextile Chiron. That lasts throughout the lunar month and is exact on May 19th. Saturn trine her moon, that lasts from about mid-May through all of June and is exact on May 30th. and Saturn sextile the Sun. That lasts from about the third week of May through all of June and is exact on June 13th, which is into the following lunar month. So she has this one problem to deal with astrologically, but she also has a lot of support. And so I think she will endure since it all involves Saturn. I think she will endure and come out a better, more spiritual person as a result. Okay, if we look at the United Kingdom, lots of stresses and strains here. I don't know exactly what's going on with the United Kingdom these days, but uh, those of you who live there will be more up to date on its current politics and events. And it looks like there's going to be a lot of activity during this lunar month. We'll have transiting Pluto opposite natal Jupiter and a semi-square, natal Mercury, and Jupiter is in the 10th house. So 10th house has to do with leaders and leadership. Pluto, death and transformation. Jupiter is the luck of the leaders, growth and expansion. There's some sort of death or transformation going on in that respect. Uh, at its most extreme, this could signify or signal a change in leadership, either the royal leadership or the prime minister or some other kind of political change or other leaders in that society. And let's see, making a semi-square to Mercury. Semi-squares, again, are turning points or breaking points. Uh, Mercury is communication. Pluto is a very intense energy. And these two drives are not going to be getting along very well. There could be some sort of protests, for instance, in the United Kingdom during this period. Some sort of arguments or disagreeable energy, uh, disagreeable communications over political issues, for instance. Again, as I say, we have to wait and see. Now, transiting Uranus, which breaks up the existing pattern, causes unexpected events unexpectedly. It is going to be stirring the pot in a lot of ways. It is going to be a square natal Saturn. So this is breaking up some sort of structure or limitation or regulation. It's going to be making a semi-square to the natal midheaven. And so that is going to represent some shakeup in the people in charge of the country, some sort of shakeup in leadership. Uh, the leadership may not necessarily change. We may not get a new king or a new prime minister, but something is going to be shaking up their hold on power, even if they maintain it or stay in power. Something is going to be a little disruptive. And transiting Uranus is going to be sesquiquadrant, both natal ascendant and natal sun. So I don't know exactly what is going to happen, but I expect, as I say, some sort of shakeup in the country. Something is stirring the pot. Uranus is going through the eighth house, which is death and transformation and other people's money. So some of the possibilities. There might be a death of someone important. Another possibility, there might be some sort of financial shakeup involving loans to Great Britain, to the United Kingdom. Again, we'll have to wait and see. And then to add insult to injury, we have transing Saturn making a square to natal Mercury. Pluto is already making a semi-square, so something in the communication area, something with the mental status of the country, if you will. And then transing Saturn is also making a sesquiquadrate to natal Jupiter. Again, this is 10th house stuff, has to do with rulership, leadership in the country. And we already had Pluto affecting that with this opposition. So I expect a lot of things to happen in the United Kingdom during this lunar month. I'm going to try and keep a close eye on events. Exactly what is going to take place, I don't know at this point. Now, on the beneficial side, we have transiting Pluto, making a trine to natal Uranus. That is going to be beneficial, help strengthen the country. It's somewhat close to the ascendant. So this will help with the resiliency and the creativity of the country. And then we have transing Saturn, making a trine to the natal moon, and also natal Neptune. This is going to be extremely beneficial because transing Saturn is completing a grand trine here. Saturn is going to bring about more stability. The moon, it's in the 10th house of leadership. It also represents the people. Neptune is in second house of finances. Neptune represents vision. And so there may be some stability for the leadership, the people, and for finances during this period. That is what transing Saturn is trying to bring about. So there's an awful lot of disruptive influences, an awful lot of tensions, but there's a few very strong good influences. And if we look at this chart, let's see, what do we have? Pluto semi-square Mercury, that is in effect throughout the entire lunar month, but it's also fading. Transing Pluto in opposition to Jupiter, that's gaining in strength, very strong in May and June, and becomes exact on June 4th. Transing Uranus square Saturn, that is impactful mainly in May and is exact on the 17th. Let's see, I had that shown where transing Saturn here, square Saturn. Yeah, sorry, transing Uranus square Saturn. Transing Uranus sesquiquadrate, the ascendant. That's in effect now, but it lasts about the first week of this lunar month, roughly the 7th through the 14th. Saturn square Mercury, that lasts throughout most of May and is exact on the 12th. Saturn sesquiquadrate Jupiter, that is in effect through the first half of May, and it was exact on the 3rd. And Uranus semi-square, the midheaven, that starts to gain strength in the second half of May, goes through about 3/4 of June. It is exact on the 3rd. And remember, midheaven has to do with leadership. This is exact on the 3rd. Pluto opposition Jupiter is exact on the 4th, and Jupiter's in the 10th house. So this aspect also has to do with leadership. So we have two very tense negative aspects being exact around the same time, June 3rd and 4th. And then transing Uranus sesquiquadrate, the sun, that is making an impact in June. It's exact on the 19th of June, which is well into the next lunar month. And for our good aspects, let's see, we have Pluto trine Uranus. That is going to be in effect throughout all of May and June, and is exact on June 2nd. Saturn makes that trine to Neptune from the mid-May through all of June and is exact on the 31st. Saturn makes that trine to the moon starting about the last week of May, and it is strong throughout all of June. So, the United Kingdom is one country I really want to keep an eye on to see what is being stirred up there, what kind of changes are taking place, both financially and with respect to leadership, either political or royal leadership. Okay, the last chart I want to look at is that of Pope Francis. He's been in pretty frail health and he's pretty old right now. Uh, so tensions could be more serious than usual because of his age. And what do we have going on? Well, we have transiting Saturn conjunct natal Saturn. He's going through a Saturn return, and that can bring a lot of restrictions to his life. Uh, transiting Saturn will also be opposite natal Neptune. So some sort of confusion or infection or chronic illness is possible as a result. And let's see, beyond that, what do we see? Trancing Saturn. I just saw that I misspelled the word conjunct here. Again, this is the typo version of my presentation. A few more typos than usual. But trancing Saturn is also going to be squaring natal Chiron. So basically, he has this uh, almost a T-square in his chart. Actually, if we take rather wide orbs, we get a grand cross because natal Chiron is in opposition to natal Sun within about a 5-degree orb. I don't have Sun circled here since I'm just using 2-degree orbs, the strongest aspects, transits for this analysis. But basically, we could say that transiting Saturn is activating all of this. The opposition of natal Saturn to natal Neptune, the square to natal Chiron, and a little bit wider square and opposition to natal Sun. So all of this brings about a lot of restriction and probably wounding in the life of Pope Francis. So this is not necessarily a good time for him health-wise. He also has transiting Uranus semi-square, his ascendant, and that can represent sudden changes in his life. Now, on the good side, he has transiting Chiron, making a sextile to natal Chiron. That's going to be here and here. So that provides a little bit of a silver lining, maybe some additional healing and some additional spiritual growth. So that is nice, but the negative aspects, the tension creating aspects, look quite severe this time. He also has transiting Neptune, trine natal Pluto. Pluto is in his first house, so this can be beneficial in terms of healing, bringing in some higher, what we often think of as more spiritual energies into his being. If we look at this graphic, which shows uh, when these aspects are within 1-degree orb and when they're exact, again, the most concerning thing is once we get past the first half of May, nothing but red, nothing but tension. So let's see what we have here. We have Pluto making that semi-square to Saturn, which, yeah, I've got that Where do I have that? Yeah, right here. Pluto's semi-square natal Saturn. Uh, Putting some transformation restriction on his life. Saturn is in the eighth house of death and transformation, not necessarily beneficial. That is in effect throughout all of May and June. Just grows in intensity, becomes strongest or exact on June 25th. So this could be very worrisome. Saturn conjunct natal Saturn, that is him in effect now and through the first week of the lunar month from May 7th to June 6th. This will be in effect from about May 7th through the 14th. Saturn in opposition to natal Neptune. That is in effect from about mid-May through all of June, becomes exact on the day of the next new moon, which is June 6th. And transiting Uranus, making a semi-square to ascendant. That's in effect mostly in June, becomes exact on June 16th. And transiting Saturn square uh, natal Chiron. This actually gets within that 1 degree orb in mid-June, so that's going to be in the next lunar month, and then it starts building. So, given his advanced age and his current health problems, uh, everything from mid-May through all of June is quite concerning, quite worrisome, because we don't have any good major aspects going on at that time. It's all just tensions through uh, squares, oppositions, semi-squares, things like that, things that exacerbate conditions. So we'll keep an eye on Pope Francis, particularly in the month of June, and we'll hope for the best for him. He has some silver linings at the beginning of May, but they fade away, and then it's just nothing but stress and a lot of restriction and some sudden changes. Okay, so that is going to be it for part 2 of this presentation on how the lunar month from May 7th through June 6th is going to affect various countries and various people. So I'll stop sharing and I'm back. So what do we see? We see there are some particular dates we want to keep an eye on, particularly May 23rd, which is going to be the day of the full moon, but we saw that there are various people and countries that will be impacted around that time, either through tense aspects becoming exact on the 23rd or around the 23rd. In particular, Israel and Hamas. Keep an eye on that. We saw that there are going to be an awful lot of stressful aspects for the United Kingdom during this lunar month. And so I want to pay particular attention to the news for the United Kingdom and what is going on over there. And then we saw that, in particular, that Pope Francis is going to have nothing but stressful aspects during the month of June. And let's see, I think maybe there was someone else, some other entity that has only stressful aspects in June. I'm just, while I'm talking, I'm taking a look backwards. Also, King Charles. So I am keeping an eye on June with regard to both Pope Francis and King Charles. There is certainly a possibility that if King Charles's health worsens, he might have to give up the throne. Uh, right now, I'm not seeing that as all that likely. Whatever happens, I'm hoping it's just something that he can weather. Certainly, medical care is better today than it was in previous centuries. So I'm hoping that he can weather out whatever tensions occur and that it doesn't have to result in uh, him having to relinquish his leadership of the crown. Okay, so things to keep an eye on what's going on with Israel and Hamas around May 23rd. Keep an eye on King Charles and Pope Francis, particularly in June, and keeping an eye on the United Kingdom throughout this entire lunar month. Well, that's going to be it. I've done a presentation in general for this lunar month, and I've done two presentations on country and people, uh, divided up into part one and part two. So I hope you've enjoyed this, found it interesting, and I hope you join me again for the next following lunar month that begins on June 6th. And hopefully, uh, I will have fewer typos in some of my presentations uh, that I'll do in the future. So for now, I'll say so long and be well and be kind to yourself and others. Do what you can to make this a better world. There's a lot of tensions going on in the world right now. In my presentation on the solar eclipse, I said it might be a year of wounding for the world. And unfortunately, that is what we're seeing now. But we also have free will. We can make good choices, we can make better choices. And when people are wounded, we can lend a hand to help them heal. So keep those thoughts in mind, and I hope to see you again soon. So long.